Good. Keep hitting the thumbs up if everybody's with me, if you got it so far on CHFJPY. And we'll come back to this. We'll circle back to this, but let's move through the list. So let's go to Euro JPY. Not that we have an entry to talk about here, just some divergence that I wanted to point out. Notice here, you have bullish divergence from oversold, which is more significant than the previous markup. This bullish divergence, look, it's still falling lower than that today as the day goes on. This compares to, if you look back to the previous 2 days, on Monday, you can see here, we had bullish divergence that was not oversold. When it came down to that divergence for the third time, it could not break it and bounced off of it. So there's some divergence that is not oversold and still is in effect and still was strong. Same thing happened yesterday. Divergence here on the top, close to overbought, but not overbought. That third hit of that divergence, it cannot break and it falls away. So back-to-back days where it comes to that third hit of the divergence line and moves away from you, which is why it's important to keep divergence in focus when you're looking at trades. But at the same time, let today on Euro JPY be a good reinforcer to you as to why you don't want to let divergence completely change the bias of your trade until it breaks the 50 EMA. See how far away this is from the 50? That's why this still has the potential to move lower today. Just wanted to share that with you on Euro JPY. Let's go over to Eurocad because this was one that I know everybody had in focus this morning. Here, perfect market sentiment, perfect EMAs. Everything looks good for longs today. We actually are getting closer and closer to this CAD news. If the CAD news is negative, it is forecasted to be it's forecasted to be negative, as you can see, lower than previous. That will take CAD quote pairs higher and CAD base pairs lower. So that will push Eurocad higher. The market sentiment line makes us long bias today. The EMA has confirmed that long bias, so you'd only be looking for buys. The two knocks against this setup that we have marked up, this is a D1 entry on the 1 minute. I'll show it to you in a second. The knocks against this are that we have bearish divergence on top, as you can see from my notes. Even though it's not oversold, that bearish divergence is still there. And we are trading still inside the Asian range, as you can see from my notes right here. It's in the Asian range and has bearish divergence. The risk reward from the entry was only 1.4 R to that divergence high, which again, from what I just showed you on Euro JPY, you should know that this could hit that level and fall off of it. So you want to make sure you're getting at least 2 R or close to it when you're trading towards divergence. So this is the D1 on the 15 minute. Now, that 15-minute upshift you can see is very strong. The 8 EMA is above the 21. If you were to come to the 1 minute, the structure that you get looks like this. It's pretty clean. Market sentiment is in the sell zone as it forms this divergence from 430 to 6. Once that divergence is set in, it pulls the market sentiment on the 1 minute chart here into the buy zone. It doesn't break under the 50 EMA as we normally would like it to see. We see it just come to the 50 and hold above it. So if you look to take entry there, because that's where the market sentiment is in the buy zone, your stop would go at the bottom here. That's where your most recent higher low is. And since then, as you can see, market sentiment has held the buy zone up until like just about right now, but it's moved up pretty nicely here. What is this, about 1.5 R? Yeah, just about, if you go all the way to the top here, just about 1.5 R. So it's a C setup, but it is a D1 entry, 100%. It fits the bill for a D1. There was a few people talking about this triangle here this morning, if I draw it like this, right? And how it fakes out to the downside and then it breaks out to the upside. I don't draw triangles for this reason. In Forex, they're very inconsistent. So it's just not a piece of my analysis that has helped me make more money. So I don't use that. I just grade the trade as what our system tells us to grade it. This was in the Asian range and had divergence against it. It's got to be a C setup 100% of the time. If it's in the Asian range and it's got divergence against it, it's always a C setup. Okay? So that's Eurocad. Euro AUD looks very similar, but you didn't have any 1 minute divergence. You have 15-minute bearish divergence, just like Eurocad. However, here, you're in the Asian range. You've got that divergence, like I said, but on the 1 minute, there's no bullish divergence to set up the entry. If you look in here, we can zoom out. RSI low right here at 515. That, as you can see, doesn't have price coming lower to be divergent, where price would need to come lower as the RSI is rising. It just doesn't set up here on the 1 minute. So you don't get an entry signal on Euro AUD. The entry signal is on Eurocad if you were trying to trade one of these two pairs this morning. But both of them have good market sentiment. Euro AUD is a little bit more reset-y, right? But again, the main issues here, divergence against the trade in the Asian range. But going into the news, you could have taken this trade, your stop could be locked, and you could see if it shoots up for you here in 15 minutes on the news. So we will keep an eye on this. This is similar to GBP AUD. GBP AUD is also in the Asian range. This one, however, has a really ugly market sentiment line for buys, and that's what we're looking at here as a long idea. This is a long idea as price has been moving up since yesterday. It's coming off the 200 EMA. So price structure looks like it's moving up, like it's bullish, but the but the market sentiment line, the yellow line of the TDI, that's not bullish today. As you can see, it's been in the sell zone most of the day. However, this has really clean 1-minute structure, again, for the D1 entry. So if you look, you've got bullish divergence on the bottom. RSI is rising. Price action is slightly falling. It retests the 50 EMA. This one looks better than Eurocad, how it comes down through the 50 and then back up through the 50 here, right? Right as the market sentiment line is in the buy zone above the 50 value. You see it above the dotted line. This is where we would look to take entry. Stop would go at the divergence low. And since then, it's been straight profit. Market sentiment has been holding the buy zone beautifully. So this was a nice 1-minute structure, nice 1-minute entry. The 15-minute setup definitely could be better. If you were putting knocks on this on the 15-minute, you would definitely need to say first knock would be, let's write, it's a D1 idea off the 1-minute chart. The knocks on this would be L50 here is ugly for longs. Trading long while it's in a downshift too, and trading under the 50 EMA. That's a small knock, just something small knock. Okay, just something to put in there. So definitely not an A setup, definitely not a B setup, a C setup at best, but another C setup D1 idea this morning that we're looking at. Okay. And now let's go over to GBP USD just to kind of wrap it up here. So what I'm looking at on GU, market sentiment has been bearish most of the day, coming into the buy zone now. We've got bullish divergence on the bottom. If you can look at this RSI, you see it rising as price falls. That's what's kind of setting up my idea to see this come higher. Similar to CHF-JPY, where I'm not trading the first break of the 50, I'm looking at this as the second break of the 50 to then send us up. On the 1-minute chart, you can see here, if I go like this, we have bullish divergence. If I blow this up, see how that RSI is rising right there? Rising RSI. Connect that on price. Falling price action. That's bullish divergence. Now with the market sentiment line on the 1-minute in the buy zone, this looks like it wants to head up from here. 8 is above the 21 on the 15-minute. It looks like it could definitely rise from here. See if we can get above the 200. If we can clear the 200, I would say it clears high a day. Especially since we have some U.S. news coming in. I would be interested to see how that shakes up this pair a little bit. But that's basically everything that I've been watching this morning. Couple of C setups on GA, on Eurocad, here on GU. This is the one that I feel like I've been most confident in, even though, again, it's not a high probability long setup because of the 15-minute TDI, because of the EMAs. Still not an A setup here. But that's what we have across the board this morning. Are there any questions on that analysis? Are there any questions on that watch list? Some people are asking about Euro USD.